be at the pool.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the June 5th, 2018 Post-Fall City Council meeting. We started the evening with a workshop and now entering regular session. Clerk will notice that all council members are present. We have a couple announcements. Youth Fishing Day at Falls Park is next Saturday, June 16th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Children 5 to 14 years old can enjoy a fun-filled day of fishing, games, and activities. All children must be accompanied by an adult. To register, call Parks and Recreation at 208-773-0539. And just as a reminder, the June 19th City Council meeting has been canceled, so our next scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, July 3rd. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
There are none tonight, sir.
Any declarations of conflict tonight? Seeing none, would you take the next 15 minutes, please, and present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the May 15th, 2018 City Council meeting. Item B is payables May 8th through May 28th, 2018. Item C is Jacobs Run Master Development Agreement, file number SUBD-0001-2018. Item D is Meadows Vista Planned Unit Development, file number PUD-0001-2018. Item E is Pioneer Acres Annexation Agreement, file number A-17-08. Item F is Pheasant's Landing Master Development Agreement. Item G is Tullamore 7th Edition Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. Item H is April Cash and Investment Report. Item I is Green Meadows Annexation Agreement. Item J is Pioneer Acres Master Development Agreement. Item K is Cecil Estates Annexation Agreement. Item L is North Place 1st Edition Subdivision Plat Application. Item M is Crown Pointe 6th Edition Subdivision Plat Application. Item N is Pointe at Post Falls 2nd Edition Minor Subdivision Plat Application. Item O is Rogers Edition Minor Subdivision Plat Application. Item P is Contract with Evan Ferguson Concrete for concrete labor and materials for Tullamore Park. Item Q is Contract with Fred's Plumbing for plumbing labor and materials for Tullamore Park. Item R is Contract with BCR Land Services for splash pad excavation labor and materials for Tullamore Park. Item S is Contract with a Reliable Electric for electric labor and materials for Tullamore Park. Item T is Cecil Estates Master Development Agreement. And item U is Purchase of 1 acre from Terry Cleveland for a future transportation project.
Any questions on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Orson?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Tonight, we have no public hearings, followed by unfinished business, and there is none tonight. Next item of the agenda is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. Mr. Rubin.
Good evening, Barry Rubin, Post Falls. I'd like to put forth an idea to the council about an issue which is tied into the growth issue. And this has got nothing to do about whether growth is good, bad, or indifferent, high density, low density, no density. What I'm concerned about is the rapidity with which residential building has been taking place within such a condensed time frame. And I'm concerned that in a short time span, we're all going to wake up one morning and look around and say, how did that happen? And so I'd like to propose an idea and at the very least prompt some discussion. And I'd classify this idea as more of an early warning type of system. And what it primarily consists of is setting an upper ceiling on the number of a fair upper ceiling on the number of residential units, high density, low density, mixed, whatever you want to call it, within a specified unit of time, and that unit of time to be the fiscal year. Why fiscal year? Because there are considerations that need to be taken into account as the city grows for financial planning. And what this would consist of during this fiscal year or some other time frame is that specified periods, an intensive study is done based on a base year, 2016 for example, evaluating the city physically, financially, and dare I say it subjectively, to see where the city stands as this building progresses, so we don't end up in an untenable situation calling for draconian measures. Within that time frame, I would also like to see what might be called a circuit breaker. At certain periods, if commercial growth does not meet a certain percentage of residential growth, no more residential building permits are issued for the balance of that fiscal year. Why do we want to do that? Well, because as we know, residences consume more in city services that we pay for. And so we would just have a completely out of balance tax base if we continue piling on residences without a commensurate increase in commercial revenue. Now, the other factor in this, I think it also helps mitigate the possibility of a boom-bust cycle. By leveling out the amount of construction, I think you provide a more stable trades employment environment, which instead of having peaks and valleys, you might end up with a more level system to provide more continuous employment for the trades, which are very important for us in this neck of the world. This is just a bare bones idea I've had, but I'm worried about unintended consequences, intended consequences, or factors which really I don't think have been taken into account about this boom building we're going through. And to preclude any unpleasant surprises, I think it's at least worth talking about, trying to come up with some plan to mitigate, not a good word, and control is certainly a worse word. I'm not really in favor of that. But something to have some gist of not ending up in a position where we have to use draconian measures to reverse an untenable situation, because we've got a boom period right now. And as I say, it's not about growth in and of itself, high density, low density. There are other people who are a lot more passionate and knowledgeable about that than I. This is just something to systematize and get a handle on the growth. And that's really it. And I hope the council, if somebody wants to say, Ruben, you're smoking the wrong brand, please go home and go to sleep, or something like that. Please even tell me that. Or maybe there's something here that we could add on to our master plan, et cetera, stimulate some discussion. I think it's overlooked what's really happening in that area. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it. The comments were heard by all. So, anyone else? Seeing none, next item up is new business, the State Highway 41 sewer and subsequent user fee. Mr. Borders had a question on this, so I'm going to let Lynn throw out his question. I think it probably will be addressed in your presentation, Rob, but Lynn asked if he could mention it up front.
Okay.
Just background for those of us that weren't sitting on the council when this project was initially done. Could you give us a little background history?
We'll take care of that during this presentation. What we'll do is we'll give you a little bit of background where the project's at, what properties would potentially be affected, and also what is the code from the city code that goes over with subsequent user fees.
Thank you.
The purpose of tonight's meeting is city staff is looking for direction from you, the council, as to whether or not staff should move forward in bringing a public hearing before you so that you can deliberate and determine whether or not a subsequent user fee would be established. Back in 2016, a sanitary sewer line was extended from Hope Avenue to Prairie Avenue, which is approximately a half mile. Back in 2005, the city of Post Falls had formed a local improvement district to extend sanitary sewer up Mullen Avenue to just south of Hope Avenue. This project here, which was called the Hope to Prairie project, was done so that a parcel of land in the northeast corner of Prairie and Highway 41 could have sanitary sewer service. All these extensions were done in conformance with our wastewater master plan. So a subsequent user fee, and the reason we're bringing this before you is that the developer of that project has requested that they would like to see a subsequent user fee established so that they can recoup some of the costs of from the properties that are benefited by the project that they put in from that half mile. City Code 13.40 addresses the equity from the consequences of putting in that sanitary sewer. You put in a half-mile sewer, the properties immediately adjacent to it can come in the next day, hook into it, and utilize that sewer and never pay the cost of having that sewer put in. This project had extra depth, fairly deep in some areas, up to about 22 feet deep. It was a 12 to 15-inch line, depending upon where you were on it, and there's a number of acres of land which it does serve. The purpose of a subsequent user fee is not intended to provide payment for the normal costs of operation. If someone comes in and they have an extra 50 feet of sewer that they have to put in to get to their project, that's viewed as normally part of the cost of doing the work. Eligible costs are design, construction, and any land acquisition that needs to be done in order to get the project, whether you have to buy some right-of-way or purchase some easement. Our subsequent user fee allows people to, with your consent, if a fee is established, recoup costs for road projects, sanitary sewer projects, or water extensions. Administration fees or overhead fees of the developer are not eligible costs. The fees would be fixed by resolution after you hear a public hearing and after a fee analysis is done. City staff has taken the preliminary numbers from the developer in this case, how much it costs for them to do the work, and took a look at the area that would be served, weighing our water reclamation master plan to determine what parcels are directly benefited by this project. An initial term is 5 years, and City Council would be able to extend that time period after that 5-year period if they so choose. Fees would be collected at the time of subdivision, building permit, or any new or changed land uses on the properties that have the fee on it. Historically, we have only established one subsequent user fee. That was back in 2006 with the KNAPP project. That put in a sewer from Greens Ferry Road about to the high school. No one ever collected any money off of that project. It disappeared after 5 years and the lands were developed and served by sanitary sewer from a different direction. The area of consideration that we have shown the sanitary sewer that was constructed in that lime green along Highway 41 from just south of Hope Avenue up to Highway 41. There are 16 parcels affected. That's including the parcel which was the emphasis of how this project came about. They had 135 acres, which includes that main parcel, and they had a project cost of about $336,424, which is lower than the amount that they had in the construction improvement agreement. They were able to do the project cheaper than they thought, which was good. If we take the total acreage, divide it by the cost, it comes out to be about $2,491 per acre. If you are interested in having a subsequent user fee, we would need to take a look at the physical bills that they have received to make sure and verify that cost. And also during the public hearing, you would make a determination as if you agree with the area that's being considered and being proposed right here. Again, we are looking for your direction as to whether or not we should proceed with scheduling a public hearing to consider adoption of a subsequent user fee for this area. Tonight, be happy to answer any questions you have, or whether or not you have any specific direction as to things you may want to see modified, or the reason why we have the area that's identified on there.
So Rob, tonight, this is project specific. I mean, this is one particular area that we're talking about.
That is correct.
So my question would be, suppose a council decides to have you bring it forward to public hearing and it's approved. Do we have then the potential of other sections of wastewater line that have been put in where people may come back and ask for similar situations?
If someone has a project somewhere else in the community, they do have that ability to make the request to form a subsequent user fee, yes.
And then my last question would be, as we talk about development on the west side, Pleasant View area, and if we want to get commercial, industrial development out there, sewer is a huge roadblock. So if something like this is approved, would that then allow us the opportunity to, citywide, to create a situation where if someone out in that particular area puts in a long extension of sewer, that they would then be eligible, or would it have to come back from another project-specific public hearing?
So each of these would be project-specific. The way our city code is set up, whenever someone asks for a subsequent user agreement, the code requires us to come and ask the council whether or not you're interested in proceeding. I think that's because generically, subsequent user agreements are probably a little bit disfavored. The idea is you typically want ordered growth. You want growth to progress in a sort of a linear fashion out, rather than jump out and then work back, because it's more cost effective. Having said that, there are times when it makes some sense. So if we were doing something on the west side of town and somebody wanted to put in a wastewater line that run a ways out there, they could certainly ask, and we would be back here having this discussion with that project in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Anecdotally, Mr. Mayor, over the past 10 years since the NAP edition, there's been about 6 different projects that took a look at this code and talked with staff, and none of them have ever come before you, because when they looked at the dollars and cents at the end of it, it didn't seem very plausible that they would get any money back, so they just proceeded on with their projects.
Thank you. Linda?
Rob, is it sort of the same mindset as like a latecomers agreement type of thing?
A latecomers agreement was synonymous with a subsequent user fee, yes.
So it's sort of like that same thing?
Yeah. A property built a project, they put part of those improvements in front of someone else's project, so they've established that fee, whether you want to call it latecomers or a subsequent user. It sets up a methodology for the person who put in that to get their share of the dollars back.
Steve?
So does the city work kind of as the middle person on this, and that they set the fee, then they collect the fee, then reimburse it back to the developer?
That is correct.
And we have done this in the past.
Okay.
So if the subject property, that's the primary beneficiary now, had not been built, and then the property we're considering the subsequent user fee were to develop, they would be then responsible for putting in that sewer if it didn't exist, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm just wondering if there's room for, rather than having the developer come back and show us exactly what they spent, if we sat down and said, it would have cost us $400,000 to put that same piece of pipe in, we'll just accept their lower number.
My understanding, and I'm going to partially defer to Warren to correct me if I'm wrong, is the reason to look at their bills is to just make sure they aren't incorporating overhead or profit and items which are not allowed per our code. It's just to make sure that the bills are legitimate and meet what our code is calling for.
Okay, so the code calls out specifically what we can.
It specifically says what can be covered and what cannot be covered.
Okay, I'm good.
Any other comments? Council, how would you like to act?
I think it should come back as a public hearing. Let's get it out on the table and talk about it. I think it's worthy of that. And, you know, when somebody put out a substantial amount of money, we should give them an opportunity to recoup it, and somebody shouldn't get the opportunity to tap into it and say, well, hey, thanks a lot for building that for us. So I definitely would support it coming back as a public hearing.
I'd second that.
That was a motion, correct?
Sure.
Second.
And we have a second here. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Orders?
Aye.
Anthony? Aye. Malloy?
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. Next item up are 5 ordinances. And Warren, are you able to read, or you want me to have Shannon read them? Okay. So the first ordinance, 3rd Avenue zone change.
Move to place the ordinance 3rd Avenue zone change on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for change in zoning classification for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from heavy industrial to community commercial services, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect this change, providing that all prior zones applicable to the lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, and providing an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance 3rd Avenue zone change to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next ordinance?
Move to place the ordinance Pioneer Acres annexation on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for annexation of property consisting of approximately 15.436 acres located in the northwest quarter of Section 27, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, and zoning the annexed property as single-family residential R1, providing for amendment of the official zoning map and providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance Pioneer Acres annexation and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item C.
Move to place the ordinance Green Acres Meadow annexation on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. You want to make a correction,
Just
Joe?
amend that to the Green Meadows annexation.
You added an acres.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a first and a motion to second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for annexation of property consisting of approximately 31.6 acres located in a portion of Section 25, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, and a portion of Section 26, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, and zoning of said annexed property as single-family residential R1, providing for the amendment to the official zoning map and providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance Green Meadows annexation and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion? Shannon.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item D, Cecil Estates.
Move to place the ordinance Cecil Estates annexation on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for annexation of property consisting of approximately 9.453 acres located at the northeast quarter of the southwest quarter, Section 25, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, and zoning of said annexed property as single-family residential R1, providing for the amendment to the official zoning map, and providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance Cecil Estates Annexation and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And item E, the last one.
Move to place the ordinance Technology Mix Zoning District on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes.
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Post Falls, Kootenai County, Idaho, to create a new technology mixed zoning district and to authorize development agreements by amending sections 18.16.010, 18.24.040, 18.24.070 subsection H, and 1824.080 subsection C to designate appropriate locations for the TM zone and establishing performance standards for the zone, repealing sections 1820.030 and adopting a new section 18.20.030 to provide a new land use table, adopting a new section 18.20.190 to authorize development agreements, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing severability, providing for the publication of this ordinance by summary, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance Technology Mix Zoning District to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye. Motion passes. Linda, you didn't have as many ordinances as there were consent items, but I still think that's a record.
I know, I thought Shelley was going to get to the letter Z.
Next item up, administrative staff reports, and we do have a report tonight, conflict of interest, planning items.
Thank you. So we've had, there's been an article in the paper as well as an editorial and a couple letters to the editor in the last couple of weeks commenting on planning commission action whereby one of our planning commission members recused themselves from a hearing and presented an application on behalf of their client. That's caused a bit of inquiry as to if that's allowable or not. The quick answer to that is it is under the conflict of interest statutes in the state. If you have a conflict, and clearly if you're representing a client, you have a conflict, you have to recuse yourself from the decision-making process. If you're sitting on the panel that night, you need to, as tonight with the mayor polled the council to see if any of you had conflicts. If you're sitting on the panel, you have to announce that and then step aside from the hearing. So the short answer is yes. Having said that, it's certainly there's an appearance there that we would like to try to avoid to the extent that we can. To that extent, we had a workshop with the Planning Commission last Thursday afternoon, and we talked through what the state ethics rules speak to in regard to how we process applications, what we can and can't do, whether we can visit the site, whether we can consider ex parte information. Some of the information we actually covered last year in our training. Coming out of that, the Planning Commission has asked staff to work on putting together essentially a code of ethics and code of conduct. We will try to define a little bit more clearly what we want and we don't want to see happen to the extent that we can. Once we'll take back to them at their next meeting a draft and have them review it, and we'll probably set up a follow-up workshop again with them to have them sort of roll up their sleeves and work through what we've put in the draft and make sure that we've tailored something that makes sense for the commission. From there, our intention is to bring that to the council and have you take a look at it and think about it, because in some ways, while you are elected officials and a code of ethics and code of conduct may not be directly applicable to you, you do hear land use issues, and it's the same issue that you may have to deal with as issues come to you. So it would be good for you to think through some of those same issues. So that's kind of where we're at. I would say we're probably a couple months out before you see it by the time we have a chance to have another workshop with the commission and have them work through the draft.
Mr. Wilson, your first comment was it is legal. The way it has been done, it is legal. Is that legal per state statute?
Yes. So what the code requires is that if you have a conflict, and a conflict is if either you, a close family member, which is within the second degree, which is parents, cousins, grandparents, nieces and nephews, brothers, sisters. So you, close family member, business associate, employee, employer, any of those people have a financial stake in the outcome, you have a conflict and you can't participate in the decision-making process. It doesn't say anything in the statute in my read, and I've bounced this question off at this point, I think 4 or 5 different experienced municipal lawyers as well to get their take. The statute doesn't reach the idea that once you've recused yourself, that you then no longer have the ability to stand before an appointed or an elected board and present your information. There's some potential free speech issues there that I wonder about as well, so.
Well, that's my thought. So if you recuse yourself or do not participate in any of the deliberations of a meeting, at the example you're talking about, that particular night, are you then not a normal taxpaying citizen sitting in the audience?
That's my concern. I mean, and the statute doesn't, like I said, it doesn't say that you can't do those things. I would be concerned that a statute could even go that far, just because we have a process that requires that you come in and get an approval for something that you want to do, and you say that because you sit on an appointed board or you're an elected official, you don't have the right to stand in front of the government and ask for their approval of a project that you want to do. That's a fairly big thing to tell people that they can't do that.
And wasn't there some deliberation and or attempt by the state legislature a few years back to address this issue?
Yeah, so prior to 2001, there was a fairly healthy rewrite of the Local Land Use Planning Act. At that point in time, the legislature, in addition to a whole host of other changes, added language that specifically allowed people who had recused themselves to make a presentation. That language was removed in 2006, and it went back to the pre-2001 language that essentially, as I said, it says that you can't participate in the decision-making process, but it doesn't say anything about whether or not you can present. So we're left back in sort of hazy territory again.
Well, my concern is that it's legal. I received comment from a local mayor saying Post Falls adhered to statute. You did what was legal. Perception of conflict of interest, I think, is the issue we're dealing with at this point. And I intend to visit with our state representatives, asking if any of them would have an interest in readdressing this issue at the state level. But my feeling is where we are right now, I think things have been done properly. I also have stated that, if you have someone sitting out there representing the proponent, that proponent just lost a vote. So the person representing him can no longer vote on it. So I think there's more to it, but I think the perception is the big issue. Any comments, thoughts?
So we'll do what we can to address the perception issues. I do think having an adopted code of ethics, code of conduct, that will try to minimize the situations where this occurs to the extent that we can. I think that's a good step. I think that's a good thing to do. I don't think it will resolve all issues for all time, but we'll do what we can.
I appreciate your attention on this. No.
I'll just make one comment, and that is that, this was a situation which even I kind of raised an eyebrow. But then as I thought through it and, the legality of it, and as it turned out, the commission voted against the member as it was, which would certainly say that they just don't rubber stamp whatever. But the other thing that I want us to keep in mind is that we ask citizens to serve on these commissions who we want to have knowledge in the field. And if we do anything that now dissuades those people from wanting to sit on a Planning and Zoning Commission or Parks and Recs Commission because what they say or how they conduct themselves may not pass somebody's smell test, I think we got to be very careful. So I'm with you, Mayor. I'd say, that the legislature looked at this, they are comfortable with it, we should be comfortable with it. I'd say it's one of those things we not want to push.
You touched on a couple of practical implications I should have mentioned. There's a couple of statutes that we have to address when we're dealing with appointing people to the boards and commissions. One is actually in the ethics statute itself. It says that the city council, when they're appointing a planning commission, they should make sure that they're having a broad representation of all interests in the community. essentially the idea that you want to have people that have experience in the development community, but also people who don't, and have an outsider's point of view so that you sort of have a broad representation of interests. And specifically in the impact fee statutes, we use our planning commission as our impact fee advisory panel. If we want to do that, we have to have, I think it's 3 members it's 2 or 3 members who are active in the development community, so that they're represented in when we're adopting those fees. So there's some practical problems that you sort of alluded to, Councillor Wolf, that if we say with a bright line that you can never do these things, it becomes much more difficult to find people who are willing to essentially set aside their livelihood to serve on essentially for free basis on a planning commission. It makes it hard for us to do our jobs.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the time and attention you're giving this, and I appreciate Planning and Zoning Commission also being willing to sit down and look at the whole situation. The mayor's comments, the only thing I would say tonight is, my kids are out of school, but I would assume that school is out or will soon be out. And you're going to have a bunch of little ones running around. Please drive careful. Let's see if we can have a tragedy-free summer. Watch out for the kids on the roads and on their bicycles, and realize that we're probably supposed to be smarter than the little ones. And let's take the offensive and be defensive so none of them get hurt. Council comments. Al?
Based on what Barry brought up and Bob's brought it up in the past, we've read about it. The whole idea of growth is an issue that our citizens grumble about when the growth kicks up like it is right now. I think it's a good idea for us to either have a workshop or some sort of a summit where we can clear up some of this stuff, because a lot of what I hear out there is misinformation. Barry brought up, the idea that we could grow the city into such a situation that we'd have to take draconian measures. I'm not going to agree with that. I think we have systems in place that keep us from ever getting to that point. But I think would be a good idea for us to be able to sit down and have people share their feelings about the growth, and for us to be able to present as a city some of the things that we do to prevent just willy-nilly growth out there. So I just think it's a good idea. I mean, the other side of it is, like what Barry was talking about tonight, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but I firmly believe in personal property rights, and when you start setting things like that, then you start taking some of those rights away from people who have owned a piece of property for a long time. They decide that this is the year they want to sell it and develop it, and now they can't because we run out or we haven't had enough commercial growth, which, I just think it's one of those things that wouldn't be a bad idea for us to, as a city, have an open discussion about it. So I'll just throw that out to the rest of the council.
Good thought.
Well, I agree with Al, because I think there's enough we've all heard enough interest in it, and I think we get comments too when you just talk to people about the growth on that. So I think as much information as we can get out to the public, both positive on that, what we are doing, I think it's a benefit, because if they don't know what we're doing, the staff is working hard on it. It's to our benefit, I think, to be on the positive end of it and get the information out first. So I think a workshop would be a good idea.
Shelley's writing notes.
Got it.
Awesome.
Everybody else? We do not need an executive session tonight, so the next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.